sound is behind me again, the methodical, rhythmic, splashing sound of the thing that is hunting me, the sound that I know heralds the end. I was a fool to get caught out in this, and I know I will likely meet my fate just as all my friends did before. Why did I try to make a run for it? Why did I assume I would make it out? No one is getting out of here alive. I dash ahead, my limbs burning, my heart racing, and think back, and ask myself, how did it come to this? My name is Tim. My friends and I had gone on a summer vacation to a lake, spa, and resort far out in the country. Good times, relaxation, a drink or two, a massage or three, and maybe a chance to hook up with Becky if I played my cards right. We had just rounded the corner to a scenic vista that must be the road leading to the resort. The area was impressive, beautiful forests, cool, clean air, and a crystal blue lake, a small slice of summer heaven. We saw what must be the resort poking out through the tree line. My friend Adam gunned the engine of his old Jeep and shouted, "Hang on!" like some old-school cowboy. We were all jostled around as we barely had enough space for all of us to fit in, and Gina punched Adam in the arm and chided him for driving so recklessly. All right, here we are, I thought to myself excitedly. I was genuinely looking forward to this. We were going to have a blast. As we all practically fell out of the Jeep, we started unpacking what little amenities we had brought with us. Besides myself, there was Adam, a friendly but rather egotistical jock type, and also my best friend. His girlfriend Gina, a very no-nonsense, bossy type. His sister Becky, beautiful and shy, but sometimes surprisingly outgoing for certain things. And our resident know-it-all Laura, the smartest person we all knew, and the only one whose ego was bigger than Adam's. We had originally planned to go to a concert this summer, since we didn't think we could afford something as lavish as a resort stay, but some person in Adam's family knew the owners and got us a stay for much cheaper than we could afford otherwise. I was taken aback by the sights around the resort, despite being almost eerier with how out of the way it was. The natural beauty made me forget all about how far away we were, how long it would take to get help if we needed it. We walked up to the main building and went inside. Odd, there was no staff there at the counter, where one would normally check in. Before anyone else could ask a question, Adam rushed forward and started smashing the bell on the counter and shouting, "Ring-a-ling-ding, ring-a-ling," like an asshole. Gina sighed. Becky and Laura giggled, and I rolled my eyes while I was laughing a little as well. A large man in too tight-fitting and not particularly seasonal turtleneck came out from a back room and went behind the desk. "Good afternoon. You must be he paused, looking down at the paper. "The Johnston party, yes?" "That would be me, good sir," Adam said in a mock English accent, bowing like a cockney moron. Very good," said the concierge. "My name is Mr. Dalton, and I will be attending to your stay, along with Miss Llewellyn, who will be on call for various staff needs. I'm afraid you caught us during our off time. You see, the resort here is nearly shut down during hurricane season, so some of the amenities may not be available." I scratched my head in confusion. Wait, did he say hurricane season? But that's a lake, not an ocean. We're miles from it. What difference should hurricanes, or possibly the odd thunderstorm, cause for a resort near a forest and a lake? "For safety purposes, we must also ask that you all sign these liability waivers before I give you your room keys. Due to the season, we will make every effort, though we cannot guarantee your safety, especially if you are caught out in a storm while partaking of some of our activities here." Laura perked up at that. "Liability waivers in case of accidental injuries or death, this says? What kind of place is this? We should go, guys. This seems sketchy." Adam, the normal voice of reason, assuming reason had about one too many, was already signing his form, saying, "Come on, guys, it's not so bad. Probably just some weird insurance thing that they have everyone do. Let's get it over with. I want to go swimming," he bellowed. Not wanting to be left out, we all agreed and reluctantly signed the strange waivers. Mr. Dalton smiled and handed us an antique-looking brass key and led us to our rooms. It was a luxury suite that was very impressive, with several rooms with fine decor, 2 hot tubs, and an impressive view looking out over the forest and the nearby Lake Casher. Everyone was stunned by how nice this place was, especially with how cheap we were able to get it, though we did notice it may have been so cheap because it seemed like we might be the only guests here during this season. Are people really that scared of storms this far away from the coast? I thought. I was bumped from my reverie by Becky, who accidentally dropped her bag right by me coming into the room. I bent down at the same time to help her pick it up, and we almost bumped our heads together. We each suppressed a little chuckle, and she smiled beautifully at me. It made me forget the quip I had come up with to try to poke fun at the situation, and I ended up staring dumbly until Adam grabbed my shoulder and said, "Watch what you're going, dude. That big head of yours is a lethal weapon." The girls chuckled, and I got a little red in the face and went on to my room. Inside the room was immaculate, but almost a tad dusty and musty, possibly due to disuse. I started putting away what little I brought with me and hopped onto the bed. Stretched out as I lay on the bed, I leaned up and looked around the room. I spotted an odd mark. It may have been a scratch mark on the wall by the closet. I got up and looked closer at it. It was painted over, but not restored, so the grooves of the cut were still visible. What did that? I wondered. I opened the closet and found nothing other than a hanging robe, a box fan, ironing board, and what was that? A small box tucked under the board. What was this? I puzzled. I opened the box and saw a handful of old photos, like old Polaroid-style photos. It appeared to be of footprints on the shore near the lake. The prints were strangely shaped, and there were more pictures of the prints in the forest, dirt, a faint watery outline of what looked like a driveway, and even on a carpeted ground, which looked disturbingly like the same carpet the resort used in certain places. This was bizarre. Did someone have a foot fetish? I laughed to myself, before becoming slightly concerned when I saw what appeared to be frantic, panicked handwriting on the back of the last one. It appeared to be of the ground soaking wet with still falling rain. Drops captured in the picture, too. The photo was blurry, but showed what looked like the outline of a person. The panicked writing read, "The rain." It was the rain. That sound, it was them. What the hell were these things? I thought. Maybe someone was peeping on people and got busted, or maybe someone was stalking the last person here. I thought of a few possibilities before I heard Adam shouting the dinner was ready. The staff, it seemed, despite the low number, had a solid cook, and we had a large dinner brought up to our room, which to our shock was complimentary. We all had a good time, and Gina, despite normally being the straight-edge type, had brought a rather large assortment of liquor, so it was not so long before we were all shit-faced and partying like a proper summer vacation. It was starting to get late, and I was about to pass out when Adam and Gina both demanded that we all go swimming out at the lake, since it was so nice and warm outside. We all agreed and changed into our swimsuits. As we walked down at the lake, we noticed a rather prominent sign by the lake with a very large font indicating a strange rule. It said absolutely no swimming in the rain. What a weird rule, I thought. Laura gawked at the sign as well and said, "Well, I've heard of not eating before swimming, but rain has little influence on swimming safety in a closed lake with no boats about. And besides," Adam said boisterously, licking his finger and holding it up to the air, "there ain't any rain in these parts for days," like some mock weatherman. Since the climate seemed okay, we splashed into the water and were soon swimming, singing, and in the unfortunate and rather gross case for Laura, puking a slight bit in the lake. I hopped out of the water, and everyone was having a great time. I thought it would be cool if we built a big camp or bonfire style thing by the shore and went to work trying to get the materials to make it. But my plan seemed thwarted as a large thunderclap appeared in the sky and rain began to fall down onto the lake and the shore, pattering raindrops ensuring that my hope of starting a fire was moot. Dang, I thought that would have been cool. Uh-oh, we're gonna be in trouble. Hope they don't throw us out, Gina said this time, rather drunk and uncharacteristically unserious. Yeah, but our towels are getting wet, I thought. And for some reason, I also thought of that strange picture that mentioned rain. Becky got out of the water first and grabbed her towel. Came up near me under the nearby tree where I had attempted to make the fire. Some time for a storm, eh? I said rather lamely. Yeah, sure is, she said, trying to humor my attempts at banter. What broke the awkward pause was a strong, almost searchlight-style light looking toward the water. It shined on us briefly as we squinted at it, and heard two sharp blows from a whistle that almost sounded like an old steam engine. Before we knew what had happened, there was a commotion at the resort, and it appeared to be Mr. Dalton and the enigmatic Miss Llewellyn had jumped into a large red truck with warning lights on the top and thundered out of the lot. They were driving so fast I thought they might be coming for us since we had broken the rule. But just as it seemed like they were going to run us down, they veered off and started down the road, pausing only briefly to have Mr. Dalton roll down his window and say, "Bad luck, my friends. It was nice to have known you. Godspeed. Indeed, God knows you will need it for what comes next. We've left the resort unlocked, but I don't believe it will be of much help. You must accept our deepest apologies. There's little we can do to help now. If you can escape, escape. If you cannot, die well. We will notify your next of kin. Farewell." He rolled up his window and sped off. What the hell does that mean? What is going on? I was panicked now, and so was Becky, who was looking back and forth, and as the rain intensified. What did we miss? Adam said, finally getting out of the water and lumbering towards us, still partly drunk. The staff just left, I said. They just up and left. They're gone. They said they left the resort open, but that they couldn't stay here. I don't know what kind of prank this is, but it's not funny. The stunt, the rain, the pictures. I was ranting, thinking maybe Adam set up this sort of thing as a big joke. But I saw the confusion on his and everyone else's faces and was afraid that this might indeed really be happening. What did they actually say? Laura asked as she approached as well. I explained what Becky and I saw, and then we looked at each other and asked, "Where's Gina?" "Hey, Gina, babe, time to get out of the water," Adam shouted as the thunderclap almost cut him off seconds after he shouted. "All right, if you buzzkills have to ruin it, I guess." She slowly walked out of the water with a buzzed grin still on her face, when it normally would have been a severe scowl. As she walked up and out of the water by a boat launch, we heard an odd sound. The splashing footsteps she seemed to be making coming out of the water also seemed to double somehow. It sounded like two people were walking out of the water, the other tread being much heavier and steadier. She must have heard it too, like us, because she paused briefly, almost as if to test the sound and the strange echo and see if it continued. After a brief delay it did. The splash, then the stomp, a stomp, then it stopped. Gina turned around and said, "Thought I was going crazy," and she was wrenched off her feet to the ground with a sickening crunch being heard as her head smashed into the concrete. We saw her flailing and ran to help, but to our horror she began getting pulled into the water by some unseen force, and her eyes and mouth began to leak lake water. When she tried to scream, Adam and I grabbed her arms and tried to pull her back out, but we were kicked off of our feet as well and heard even more watery footsteps and a disturbing gurgling sound. Adam was shouting and thrashing, trying to pull Gina out of the water with all his might. He cried out to her to breathe, as it looked like he was getting some response from her. Her mouth opened again, and water gushed out and enveloped his head as well. There was a splashing and sprinting sound of footsteps, and Adam was knocked back with such violent force he was launched into the lake. But rather than sinking, he floated on the surface, convulsing and apparently drowning despite not being under the water. The spectacle was enough to force Becky and Laura to shriek louder than I had ever heard anyone scream, and ran towards the resort. I shook myself from my own terror-induced stupor and did the same. We made it inside, panicked and panting, shivering with cold terror on our breath. I closed the door of the entryway and found a large lock and slid it into place. We huddled around, not knowing what to say. Becky was crying, but Laura broke the silence. What the fuck just happened there? That can't be real. They just drowned above the water. Those footsteps, what is going on? I didn't know what to say. I just said, we need to find a phone. We need to call for help. Maybe there's a landline that actually has reception, since we knew the phones back in our room had no service for miles before we got here. The rain was getting heavier. It was a downpour outside. As we searched around the entrance and the reception office, we found a phone, but our hope was short-lived. We picked it up and the line was dead. Nothing for emergency service, no radio or anything else. We were stuck here alone. My panicked and grief-stricken mind came to grips with the revelation. We heard and saw something unbelievable outside. Over the sound of the intense rain, we heard the heavy, methodical approach of splashing footsteps. They stomped across the parking lot, splashing gouts of water where they landed, but nothing was making them that we could see. We held our collective breath as the stomping and splashing footfalls approached the front door and stopped. There was a terrible silence, and for a moment we thought that maybe nothing would happen. Then we heard what sounded like scratching on the glass, and then a terrible cutting sound as words began to appear, cut into the glass. From that side, looking in, we started to shake as we read the words. Help us. We're drowning. Help us. We're your friends. You can't leave us. Becky let out a sob. No, Adam, no, he's still alive. We need to help him. He's dying. We stopped her from moving toward the glass as we stood there petrified. By the time the invisible writer had stopped, we heard a knock and scratching at the back door, and then hideous gurgling sounds like someone's head being forced under water, breathing in too much water. It sounded from above as well. My heart felt like it stopped when we heard footsteps wetly clomping on the ground above us. Laura ran, sprinting away towards the suite. I couldn't breathe. I sat there dumbfounded. Becky grabbed my arm and was screaming at me. They have Adam! I couldn't respond, so she ran toward the window where she said she saw him. She said he was on the ground and he was drowning. She unlocked the door, and the sound of the bolt shooting back knocked me back to my consciousness self, and I barely had time to loose a strangled scream of, Becky, no! When a cascade of water and thunderous marching of wet footsteps rushed forward and bowled her out of the door and into the drenched ground beyond. I saw her terrified look when she looked back at me, and her scream was cut off by some unseen hand smothering her with that impossible water. I ran as fast as I could. I tried to get to the suite where Laura was, but as I reached the door and frantically tried it, I realized I didn't have the key. I screamed for Laura to let me in, but I heard nothing on the other side of the door, only footsteps behind me. Slow, wet, padding footsteps over the carpeted floor of the resort. I screamed as I lowered my shoulder and barged into the door, once, twice, 3 times, then 4 times, until finally it broke a hinge and fell forward. The padding footsteps were behind me when I fell into the suite. I saw Laura with her hands over her ears, huddled on the couch, almost catatonic. Come on, I shouted. We have to go, now! I beseeched her, but she was utterly unresponsive. The footsteps were in the room now, slowly moving toward the middle of the room. My heart sank. I panicked, and I fled. I left the footsteps to catch up to her and engulf her. I'm only thankful I didn't have to hear her scream. I slammed my door shut, grabbed my bag with my phone, effects, and other things, and closed myself in the closet of my room. I heard the footsteps, then the knocking, then the scratching, then the voices. Help us. We're stuck under the water. Only you can save us. Save us, Tim. Help us. It hurts. The water's too much. We're drowning. I held my hands over my ears as well, and closed my eyes, and hoped and prayed for an end to this that Maybe this was all a terrible dream. After what felt like ages, the sound stopped. The voices, the footsteps, the scratching. It was all quiet now. I noticed the rain had stopped as well. The rain. The rain, maybe it was somehow connected to it. The goddamn rain where we were swimming in the lake. And it started to rain. Did those bastards know that this could happen? Was that what the waivers were for? My hands curled into fists. I couldn't believe it. I redoubled my will and fought on, determined to at least find some way of getting out of here and making them pay for risking my friends' lives and almost getting all of us killed. If it stopped raining, I could get away. I need to get out of here. I cautiously opened the door and looked outside. Nothing grabbed me. No watery footsteps were heard moving anywhere. It was dead silent. I walked out slowly through the hall to the living room, fearing what I might see, but Laura was gone. I felt ashamed and guilty that I had not tried to grab her and run her to the safety of the room. I slowly walked out the room and downstairs. The wind was still kicked up and the front doors were hanging open, creaking in the blowing wind. It was almost morning, and a faint light crept into the entryway. I had gotten Adam's keys from his room and should be able to get away using the Jeep. My eyes darted frantically and I looked around, peeking outside to see ominous clouds, but thankfully no rain at the moment. I slowly walked to the parking lot, my heart racing at the sounds of my own footsteps, making sure I didn't hear another behind or in front of me. I got to the Jeep and I thought I might actually make it, but as I pressed the unlock button on the fob, a thunderclap resounded from over the hills, and in moments a morning shower had begun, rain pattering off me and the Jeep. I froze and then exploded into motion, reaching for the door to open it when I saw inside and fell backwards in indescribable horror. Adam and Gina, or at least their boneless-looking bodies, slowly writhed up into the front seats of the Jeep, almost as if being moved into position like some demonic marionette puppets. I stood there, mouth agape in horror, as Adam's face slunk toward me and his mouth opened. Water began gushing out and filling up the cabin, spilling out, and corpse things that used to be my friends moved to open the doors, and the wall of water rushed out to meet me. They remained to collapse onto the dashboard, but the splashing footsteps began immediately coming toward me again. I screamed like a madman and broke for the woods, the implacable footsteps never receding too far behind, no matter how fast I run. It's hopeless now. My energy is all but spent, and I run on past my limits in pure desperate bid to survive. My whole body aches, and I can't breathe, but I keep running. I know if I stop, I will die. I think I see what might be a main road. I think irrationally that it might not be able to follow me past a certain point. But just as I approach the road, I trip over my own tired feet and some vines and fall into a ditch by the road that's filled with water from the flash flood. I rolled over, spitting water out, screaming and panting, and defiantly challenging my fate. I stand up in the water. It's up to my waist. I look back the way I came. I hear nothing. I let out a sigh of relief. Could this really be over? I ask. There is a painstaking silence. I exhale. I turn around to try and climb out of the ditch. Then I hear it, ever so softly, another footstep in the rain.